So my name is Laura McGrane. I'm the director of VCAM. I'm also in the English department, but haven't been spending as much time there over the past 6 years. I'm just going to talk briefly to set up a little bit of the background of this space, its principles, its programs, and then I'm going to turn things over to Kent, who's going to talk specifically about the Maker Arts space. So this is an old gymnasium, or was an old gymnasium on campus, and around 2013, we returned to questions about what this space could become. And this conversation, which was also a conversation with presidents, with provosts, with board members, with our amazing IT staff, with faculty across the divisions, was one that said, how can we think about active learning at the core of the liberal arts? And in particular, we wanted to go back to a model of craft that really was part of the inception of the liberal arts in the medieval period moving forward, thinking not just about craft making and praxis as something that happens in lab spaces over here, but something that happens across the curriculum and at the very center of campus. And this is a space that's at the center of campus. So as we began working through this project, and this gives you a little bit of a sense of what it now looks like, there were a number of principles in place for us. One, in the way that this has been historically a gymnasium, we're thinking about bodies in motion across classrooms, bodies in motion making in terms of the digital arts, in terms of documentary filmmaking, in terms of create spaces and the Maker Arts space that we'll look at. This is a space that opens up our understanding of community. So we have campus communities, we also have local communities, we have Philadelphia communities, we have regional communities. How do we start to think about activated, even flipped learning that flips our classrooms open from merely spaces for our students in a kind of core curriculum to spaces that open into our communities? This is also a space that has allowed us to think about programming that is deeply trans-divisional, while also still respecting the divisions and departments. And so it's a space not owned by any single department or any single sort of group of faculty, but a space where people come together to work and experiment. So this is a very bland slide, but what it shows is that over the course of the last 5 years as we were creating the space, we were also building programming. And in fact, over the past 4 years, we've brought in about $3.4 million for programming that includes, and I'll sort of work out our acronyms, we're all acronym people, a new visual studies program that is visual studies sort of across the curriculum, an interdisciplinary minor. Our Haverford Innovations program that opens into all of these questions of social entrepreneurship, design, working in and outside the classroom. PAC, which is a Mellon-funded Philadelphia area creative collaboratives program that works in a sort of triangulated model that brings together artists, nonprofits, and courses across the course of a year. It takes us into Philly, also brings Philly to us and thinks about all of these spaces in between. Our summer DocuLab program that takes students, faculty, and staff, whether to Philadelphia or Oaxaca, to kind of create these sorts of projects. And then crucially, the Maker Arts space and programming. And that's what we're going to focus largely on today, because for a building that itself is a laboratory, the Maker Arts space is the laboratory in the laboratory. And what we see across all of those programs I pointed to in the last slide is that many of them are sort of instantiated and find their spaces, their products, and their projects in the space that Kent has now sort of designed and opened up for us to run. So part of what we really want to think about in a conceptual way today is how spaces inform our curriculum, how we think about integrating these acts of praxis, of collaboration, of making community, of making new communities within these spaces and across these spaces, and how we think, and we've already heard this in the other presentations, about these as spaces not just for faculty, not just for students, not just for staff, and not just for community members, but spaces that only run because we have IT staff in those spaces making things happen. And we have faculty from across spaces coming in, and we have members of the Philadelphia community and artists together. And so I think that model that really thinks through new structures for staffing, new structures for even reporting lines and resourcing has sort of helped us to open up to some of the challenges of the more siloed classrooms that, again, I think these sort of flipped learning experiments are doing as well. But for us to kind of really push back on certain kind of traditional models of the liberal arts that both sort of embrace the things that we care deeply about, but really open up new possibilities. And for those new possibilities, I'm going to turn things over to Ken.
So yeah, this is the makerspace. It is a digital fabrication lab, and what that means is we have ideas, we put them on the computer, and then the computer interacts with the machine, and the machine does something. So there's additive manufacturing, there's subtractive manufacturing. An example of additive manufacturing would be like a 3D printer, which is adding material. Subtractive would be taking it away. Now there's a lot more to it than that, but that's just a good working definition for today anyways. So we have a focused attention on individuals or small groups, an interest in partnering with community organizations, and a goal to be accessible for collaborations with faculty across disciplines. Through courses, class visits, workshops, open studio, and summer programming, the Maker Art Space has a focus on STEAM. We are not an engineering campus, but we have been able to integrate engineering concepts. At the same time, we're holding on to our art identity and our practices, and we are centered on access, making an education, and our unique position provides us with very few restrictions in terms of programming and what we can do. So, what does that all mean? Firstly, we're a classroom, and this is an image from our physical computing class. It's the hardware side of computers. Students work with servo motors, Arduinos, microcontrollers, and then what they do is they make art with these things. And I'm really interested in that, turning around, taking practical skill sets, and then using that to make art. That's my favorite way to learn. Then we have a lot of class visits that come into this space. So this is an image from Lindsay Rexon's course. Lindsay Rexon is a faculty in the English department. Her class was reading Frankenstein, and she asked me to give a talk on the ethics of making, and kind of talking about this ease of use, this ease of digital replication that is happening over and over again. So what we then did is used our handheld 3D scanner. The students got a chance to 3D scan themselves. They put those images, those representations of themselves on the computer and digitally alter themselves. You see a student put a bunny on their head here. After that, then we 3D printed these objects. Obviously, that takes a day or two, so they came back the next day and got their object to take with them. So by using trending and new technologies, we were able to connect the past with the present and make concepts relevant and accessible to students. And though we wish to work with all departments, and we're open-minded to do so, we have a particular investment in the printmaking lab and the sculpture department. This is an image of, so we have, the print class comes in every semester. They use the laser cutter to do engravings in materials, and then they'll make prints from those. So what was I going to say about that? Oh, yeah, I remember, that's okay. And I also do a lot of workshops, introductory workshops. A lot of them are focused on a given machine or how it relates to a certain software, and they're usually intended to bring people in. So this particular one, we're showing off the laser cutter and the relationship that the laser cutter has with Illustrator, which is a graphic design software. I also bring in others to do workshops. In the center there is Stephen Daly. He's the the metal shop technician. He was giving a workshop on cement and mold making. And then I have student workers do workshops as well. So each one of my student workers is required to do one workshop. And the requirement for that is that they teach something that they know and that they're passionate about. They don't have to be showing off the fanciest new technologies. I just want them to be in the space getting people excited about something. So in this particular one, he was giving, this is Nikki, giving a workshop on web design and content management, WordPress. And then this past semester, so we've been open for 2 years now, and this past semester we started doing long form workshops. So I put up this poster around campus, and I didn't really, I thought, oh, maybe I'll get 10 students interested. And 42 students showed up to this, who wants to make a longboard with me. So it became this logistical challenge, but kind of a good challenge, right? So I asked Laura, I was like, do we have the budget for this? And then what we did is we had them fill out some forms saying, you're definitely going to show up to all of these, the liability waiver and all that. And we ended up getting 27 students who participated, which is still really good. 27 students learned a little bit of CAD, computer-aided design, and they drew the shape of their boards from the top view. And then the following class in the multiple groups, I did small workshops where they were learning about the CNC routers. This machine you see a little bit here. It's a big cutting machine to cut things out of wood. Give them an introduction to that machine. Then we cut out the longboards. The next workshop, we did assembly. You see students holding, I love that fish longboard. And then there was an optional decorating workshop that happened later too. So these workshops invited students from all aspects, all disciplines, to think about design. And it was not just a recreational activity, but it was a way to bring students in and help kind of create this community that's a really important part to us. And by the way, like learn real skills too. This is actually a scene from our open studio hours. I don't really condone students working on the computers and studying along board, but it happened. Somebody photographed it. That's Nikki, one of my student workers. So these are hours that are just open. The doors are open. There's usually 2 student workers there, and they're running the 3D printers, the laser cutter, the vinyl cutter, and the 3D scanner. And the idea is that they walk students through projects. They just sort of allow things to happen. There's certain machines that are off limits during that time unless I'm there, like the CNC router is an example of that. That machine can only run when I'm around. But it's just sort of further promoting this community that's really important to us. And yeah, the last part of this whole thing is this community engagement and summer programming. So another kind of big component of this whole thing is making sure that there's something happening in the summer, that there's ongoing programming. We are open to the community beyond just sort of our interactions with students. So considering that this summer we have 3 pilot programs happening, working with 3 different nonprofits. We're working with the North Philly Peace Park, working with teenagers making furniture. We're going to be working with the Center for Creative Works, working with adults with cognitive disabilities, making art using the 3D printers, and we'll be working with this organization called Skate the Foundry, that they teach kids how to skateboard and they make skate parks, and they heard that we were making longboards, so they're going to make longboards with us. And then, so this is an image from a community workshop that we did over Halloween. We were making monster masks with faculty and staff families. I think next year what we'll do is we'll take a pumpkin and we're going to carve it with a CNC router, because I think that'd be cool. So makerspaces help us understand how we think about communities, and some of these pilots are examples of that. I'll get to that in a second. So what I find that works best about our space is its flexibility. A faculty in the English department or math department can approach me about utilizing the lab, and we can make a collaboration happen. This kind of open-ended approach is where much of the success is. And I believe this model would not be possible or would be more difficult at a larger university. So I came from a bigger university, and I can tell you that it just would have been more challenging. Some of the flexible thing that we're trying to do here. So holding onto this artistic identity, the Maker Art space at Haverford is able to emphasize STEAM concepts at a small liberal arts college while also creating and sustaining community environment for all visitors to the space. So I always get asked this question, so I'll just have 2 quick slides about who comes to this space and how many people are there. This is showing you our workshops and the student participants for these workshops. So since fall of 2017 when we opened, you can see we've been steadily increasing in numbers. This last semester we had about 175 through workshops. Most of that was for the longboards. I actually did a lot less workshops than last semester, but they were just better attended, which is what I would prefer to do. Oops. And then this shows you during open studio hours how machine breakdown tends to be. So the laser cutter is the most popular by far, 31%, followed by 3D printers, about 15%. And then this huge area other is these things that are hard to quantify. That somebody comes in and wants a tour, or I had a group of students last week working on a video game, and that somebody come and fix their bike recently. So these are things that just kind of happen organically, and I think that's really good. I like that it's hard to sort of keep track of us. It kind of lends this idea of an anything lab that I'm really interested in, and that we kind of keep changing our own definition of what we are. So I'll just wrap up with 2 individual projects that I thought were examples of students taking things particularly far in the lab. So this is Mohammed, and he built this prosthetic hand. He found the file through this website called Thingiverse, which is a file that people upload designs and you can download them. He 3D printed the prosthetic hand, and then he got a muscle sensor to correspond with these servo motors in here. So if he flexed the muscles in his hand, it triggered those motors and it could make the hand open and close. And then this student is Micah. Micah started working with me at the very beginning. And with all my student workers, I say, well, let's set a goal for what you want to do. Like, what do you want to get out of being here? And Micah was interested in making guitars. And so we started with this 2x4 guitar. And it worked. It was this experimental noise rock instrument. It was hard to play like a chord, but it was cool. And then I said, let's do it for real. So we started sketching out designs, and then we take those ideas, we put them on the computer somehow. With a CNC router, you create what's called a simulation, so you have a sense of what it's going to do before it actually operates. This is a really cool image to me. It may seem like nothing at all, but Micah's changing a bit with the CNC router. It's just cool. And then cutting out the instruments. We started with kind of traditional guitar bodies. These are called Telecaster guitar bodies. Since then, we've moved on to Micah's designs. I don't have an image of that though here. Oops. Micah soldered the guitar themselves, did all the wiring, all the assembly, stringed up the instrument, and then had a fully functional instrument by the end of it. So I like to leave with these because, I think a lot of stuff we're doing is really exciting and fun, but there's something really cool about seeing a student really run with the technology and do something that is really remarkable. That's a fully functional guitar. They could start a guitar business. Yeah.
And just to sort of end on that, I think sort of recognizing all of this space for happenstance and serendipity that is also sort of wedded to a more top-down approach of programming, so that we think about this as our incubator in the incubator. And so this allows these low-stakes projects and these sort of possibilities for curriculum, for programming to play out, and then I take some of them that work, and then we create programs. So when we think about change in higher education, we think about change in the liberal arts and the ways that we can get stuck in committees around curricular change, we can get stuck in those committees. There are no committees around any of this, and so we get to do this, and there's proof of concept in that, and that opens into these amazing possibilities, I think. And so, to my mind, this kind of work, again, across spaces, across divisions, across communities, allows us to open out, to kind of crack open what the liberal arts can possibly be and continue to be in ways that are low stakes, and then move into much higher stakes projects as well.
Yeah, that's all. Thank you.